If you believe for 1 minute that you are not absolutely accountable for your life as it is, you're in for a huge shock. Stop talking. Stop talking. Everything you just said is a lie. No, you can't blame the other person for the misery you create in your own life. Listen to what you're saying. You're making excuses for someone's self-abuse. That shit's not out there somewhere. It's looking at you in the mirror. People, when will we learn? Enough is enough.
Do you even know what we're talking about today?
No, I just trust the process.
Okay, so if we were talking about anything, what would it be?
What?
What?
If anything. ...
If anything.
We're going to talk about my eyelashes.
Your eyelashes are beautiful. What else could we possibly talk about?
We could talk about your terrifying little Star Trek doll thingy behind you.
My Russian Star Trek Matrushka doll? Is that what you're talking about?
Matrushka hargitay you.
Yes. Okay. So, no, what else could we be talking about? What's a shared experience that we could talk about?
Our complete, utter, and total awesomeness?
Yes, we could.
Okay.
Obviously. I believe our audience is familiar with that.
Maybe Food Inc.?
Food Inc. the film?
Yes!
The documentary?
Documentary?
That we watched together recently to our horror?
Who are you calling a horror?
Well, you put the horror in horror.
Welcome home.
So, yes, we're going to talk about Food Inc.
Okay.
So, what do you make of that movie that we saw?
It was very terrifying, and I was very saddened in many ways.
What was terrifying about it?
It was terrifying that we are all so blindly controlled by that devil company with the corn. I don't remember their name.
No, the soybeans?
Soybeans then?
All right.
Yeah. Or, yeah, whatever had the Roundup already brewed into the seed.
Right.
Yeah, that was horrifying to me.
The Roundup resistant soy, yeah.
Yes. And then I was saddened by the way that everyone was kind of pushed, the little guys were pushed into either obeying or getting the F out.
Right. So for our listeners and viewers who do not know, there is a film, a documentary out called Food Inc. And it is a great documentary about basically just the food industry. It's not per se a slam piece. It's not.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
I mean, it just is about food. It's where does your food come from the beginning, from the very seed of it to when it hits your grocery store. Where does it come from? And so we decided to watch it, and I was in fear that it was going to be like this horrifying presentation about like cow slaughterhouses and things like that. And it was going to be gross and gruesome and to scare us about food. But actually it was quite compelling. I thought it was interesting how it talked about the way in which food goes from a farm and ends up on our table and what that process and that path looks like. And I agree with you. The most terrifying part of it was how much of what we think is variety is really just 5 companies producing it all. Yeah. Like that corn comes from one place, or chicken really comes from one distributor or supplier, and beef comes from one place. And so as we were watching that, I was sitting there and, you know, we had our conversation about as consumers, we have the power. We basically tell the stores what we want based on what we buy. And I remember watching this show and feeling completely powerless to cause anything different because it was so big and so infiltrated into the government. I mean, that was the most terrifying thing for me, was that the companies that are regulated by the government, well, those regulatory agencies are run by ex-employees of those companies that are being regulated. Yep. And that was such a profound conflict for me, that as I started looking at, well, what would it take to cause something different here? Because, you know, we always look at things from the perspective of, well, what do we do to change it? And I was overwhelmed by just what it would take to cause something different in that world. Because when 90% of the food is controlled by 5 companies, that's scary. You know, and it talks about how because of that scenario that's set up, it's a razor's edge that if fuel prices go up, that affects every aspect of food, and every part of food production goes up. And how to create cheaper, in order to have a hamburger that's $1 on the dollar menu, what it takes to produce the ingredients for that to be just $1.
Yeah.
Which is staggering. The control that like a McDonald's corporation has in order to make $1 hamburger, how it controls the entire chain because of how it has to buy. It wants to buy billions and billions of pounds of beef. Well, then the beef producers have to show up in a certain way to produce that at a certain price, or else, I mean, it was crazy. So when you were watching that, what feelings came up for you about the food industry and the government? Because I'm interested to hear what your take was as that story was unfolding about how our food is put together. What came up for you?
I really felt lied to. And like it was lies by omission. Like I felt like the whole government didn't want me to know, like behind the scenes, these little sneaky things, and how they showed those, cabinet members or congressmen or senate or whoever, like you were saying, were from that company, Moron or whatever it is.
Whatever that company was called, yes.
And that was so sad to me that those people sold out on themselves. And they've sold out for who they represent, whether that's, simply the country or if it's breaking down straight to a community. That was sad to me that they sold out to that degree.
I agree that was a terrifying part of this whole thing, was that who we expect to be protecting us and to be making decisions that protect the public interest were in fact in the pocket of these companies.
Yep.
And that company you're talking about is called Monsanto. I believe. Monsanto.
Yeah, I think so.
Which, whether you translate that into French or Italian or Spanish, it comes out to be something like my savior.
Shut the front door.
Or my saint.
That had something to do with Santa.
No, not my Santa, but maybe also. And it's true that the idea that these companies don't want, like you were saying, feeling lied to, don't want things packaged to say that they come from this place or that they are this type of product or this type of meat or they're genetically modified, that they fight tooth and nail to keep that information away from the public, absolutely contributes to that feeling of being lied to. Because, they showed a scene from Congress or something where someone was petitioning to have, if meat is from a cloned animal, that it should be marked as such, which it isn't.
That
not
is
the
so
case.
gross. That is so gross.
The fact that you are out there possibly buying genetically modified beef to the point that it is a clone of another animal, which, man in the sky forbid, could possibly have some deleterious effect. But that they're there fighting it because and the logic was great, that they didn't want to create undue fear in consumers and cause them not to buy that product because it was from a cloned animal. Well, isn't that feedback enough that there's something not working in that conversation? That the idea is giving us more information would make us not want to buy that product, so we're not going to give you more information about it?
Yeah.
The idea that genetically modified crops like soybeans don't have to be labeled such. And so I love that the opposition, those people who are in favor of genetics and heirloom crops that are natural or at least as close to original as they can be, they've decided that they're going to start labeling their products that they're not genetically modified. So that at least we have that. That's awesome. That option to then the assumption is that if it doesn't say non-GMO, it is a genetically modified product. And as I was looking at how the government subsidizes corn production, basically making corn cheaper to sell than it is to produce, because the government gives money to the farmers to create cheaper food, cheaper corn.